All right, welcome back to another Wright Stew podcast. I am Paul Stewart.
And I am Brian Wright, still not in Speaker Studio, but doing good on Wednesday morning.
Hump day. You know what
Get
that
through it.
means. Halfway home, baby.
Halfway home. Hey, I would say Marcus Jordan, I would say we're probably doing better than him for just at least a moment in time.
Well, Marcus, I'm guessing, has had a pretty good life.
For sure.
Probably had some tough times as well. And so Marcus Jordan, for all of you out there, is the son of legendary NBA Nike mogul Michael Jordan. Marcus Jordan played a little basketball at Central Florida, but more recently is in the news for something not so great. Say no to drugs, kids. Marcus Jordan got pulled over and had cocaine in his car. Not great. Not a great look. Got arrested.
Pipping a blue Lambo. He was in a blue Lambo when he got pulled over. And that's pretty attention getting. You probably need to be.
What do you think he does for work to get that blue Lamborghini? Think he's in sales?
Well, I would say he probably gets given a gift or two, but it looks like he runs like a sneaker boutique in Orlando. At least that's what started in 2016. But I would imagine, like, I know there's people that like have good Christmases and they get money and different things for Christmas and I would imagine Dad probably passes across a couple $100 here and there. And when I say a couple hundred, I mean $10,000 or $20,000, whatever keeps him below the getting recognized from the IRS. But yeah, I mean I imagine that lifestyle. Think about that lifestyle though. You grow up, your dad is the greatest player of all time. And even in the moment, those discussions were going around. He never quite got his dad's height, but
yeah,
still,
he's like 6'2", yeah.
And not a small guy per se, but definitely not 6'6". And I think it's really hard. That's the reason Steph Curry is such a unique guy. I think it's really hard to grow up with the work ethic and the grit that you need to be successful in athletics, right? You see sometimes, family members that find a way to work alongside their business or work for the Jordan brand or whatever in the family's case. But it's really tough when things have been really easy early,
Yeah. So that is so one more Marcus Jordan tidbit. Ryan, do you remember this? Do you remember who he dated?
No.
He dated Scottie Pippen's ex-wife.
So it's not making great decisions there.
I mean, Jordan. So Marcus was born in 1990. So he's mid-30s now, right? Mid-30s. So he was born in 90. So he was, 5, 6, 7, 10 years old, through that age when his dad was winning all the NBA titles and
with Pippen.
With Pippen. So I mean, I remember when that was happening. What a weird kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I think I don't know how old she is, but she is pretty strong for her age. But there does feel like there's something probably missing there.
So Larsa, she was born in 1974.
Okay.
So she is 50 years old.
Yeah. I mean, she looks great for 50.
Which, I mean, it's a 15-year delta, I guess. So not.
I mean, you see it go around. It happens. Typically in the other direction. You see a lot of 50-year-old guys. I mean, Jordan's wife is, who knows how young she is. She looks pretty young. The dad.
I mean, we've referenced it. Old Chapel Bill. He's doing it too. So.
Well, he's got that's almost a 50-year range difference, which seems a little bit much.
Hey, love is blind, Brian. Love is blind. We're coming up on Valentine's. Tis the season.
Tis the season.
Love Cupid out there just shooting folks in the rear end.
Yeah, I think what you see is, I think you see a young person that knows what they want: money, security.
Yeah,
and then you see an older person what they want: young and still in shape.
Young. Yeah, they're young. You're young, Brian. We'll stop it right there. Hey, what about you got big Valentine's Day plans this year?
No. I try to plan like the 13th. That's when I kind of really try to plan and put everything together. Move. Yeah.
I try to tell my wife every day is Valentine's Day. Doesn't go over really well.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have. I'm not great at this. I mean, we do usually do a dinner or something around it. Usually, it's when the season. If your kids are in spring
Oh,
sports.
baseball, softball, yes, lacrosse. A lot of sports start kicking off around that same time. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So Marcus Jordan, yeah, tried to leverage a little bit. Hey, do you know who I am? Didn't work out so well, but it got Brian and I to thinking a little bit. There've been quite a few NBA, MLB, NFL, boxing, race car, kind of family traditions, kind of legacies. And so we were going to talk through a few of those today and share some of our personal stories about some of those kind of heritage lineage folks that we came across as players and through our time in baseball. So we'll go over first some of the people. Yeah, so clearly the most prominent right now is LeBron and Bronny,
Do you
right?
think they are? I think
It's
that is
prominent.
short lived. Yeah,
I don't think anybody's going to say like, hey, that was the great. If you're talking about greatest father son, probably not going to be at the list. LeBron's going to carry most of that weight, I think. I mean,
yeah.
but they may end up being just on based on LeBron's, but LeBron and Bronny clearly they've been in the news, and that's a good story. The Sanders recently, Dion and Shador has had a great career at Jackson and now Colorado, and it looks like he's going to be a top 5 pick. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how his career kind of matriculates. And then the one that we really love, right? Baseball. You've got one of the guys I used to play with, Lou Collier. His son Cam is now a top prospect in the Reds organization. Hit a home run last year in the Futures game. I think Cam has a really bright future in baseball. There's been a lot the holidays. You
The
know,
holidays kind of feel like legacy. Obviously, no one mentioned them out of Oklahoma State and stuff, and
yeah,
so it's
Matt and Jackson and the whole crew.
and
Right? I
the
think
whole shebang.
there's another one coming. Um, who are some of the? So I know one that sticks out for you in baseball immediately, Brian, because
Obviously, Ken Griffey Jr.
he's your favorite player. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, Ken Gifford Jr. I mean, the kid played with such freedom, and he was a hat backwards guy, which I'm really not a hat backwards guy
well,
on
did
the
you hear the
field.
story behind that? Do you know that?
No, let's hear it.
So Griffey grew up in the clubhouse, was in the big red machine in the clubhouse his whole youth, right? What a cool time. And he would put on his dad's hat, but the hat it would always cover his face because the brim it was too big, the brim. So he just started turning it around. So it wasn't like a defiant, it wasn't a like it's kind of a sweet
Kind
kind
it
of
kind of was a practical thing
yeah,
for
it
a
was
little
kind of a
kid.
sweet,
Yeah.
cute story, right? Like it was King Griffey Jr. wearing his dad's hat, and
Well, yeah, that makes
and
it
then it
that
just
much
became kind
better.
of what he was known for, and that sort of thing around the clubhouse, and then so he was seen a little when he came to the big leagues. It was considered like a little brash, a little, but it was just who he was. It wasn't,
And he was so young, dude. 19 years old, 20 years
yeah,
old. I mean, you think about kids now when I mean, even some of the greats, there's only been a handful much younger and got to play with his dad. He's obviously an exception. Barry Bonds,
yeah,
obviously
Barry
his
and
father
Bobby
son.
Bonds. Yeah, I know the Alomars, Sandy, Roberto, Sandy Jr. were big. So I actually got to play with a couple kind of lineage guys, and so in 2004 I was in Double A in Huntsville, Alabama. So with the Brewers, we had Prince Fielder and Tony Gwynn Jr. on our team. So Prince, his dad was Cecil Fielder, played in the big leagues for a long time. I think probably most known for being with the Tigers, hit 51 home runs, 53 home runs, and like 91, 92 in that time frame. And then Tony Gwynn Jr. Clearly, his dad was Tony Gwynn. What maybe the greatest hitter of all time? I mean, for average, for
For
contact.
average, it's hard to debate unless you go back up, 100
Yeah,
years.
like you go back to Ted Williams or folks like that. But I mean, of the modern era, I mean, you see some stats like this guy finished with 190 strikeouts last year. Tony Gwynn struck out like 190 times in the 1990s. Like he went 10 years of doing that. So
I saw some of those things.
yeah, so
Hey,
his
how was the relationships with their fathers, right? I know you've mentioned a
yeah, so
little bit.
Prince and Cecil Fielder, no bueno. They were not talking. There was something that I never really dug in. There was something to do with money, agent. something there didn't work out, and they were not talking. Cecil Fielder, he did come. He came to the first game. I remember him being at the first series, and he just kind of kept his distance. He came a couple times during the season, and there was never any altercation. There was never anything going on, but there was clearly something going on, right? They weren't
Right.
talking, but there was never any scene or anything like that, at least at the field or anywhere we saw. Um, Tony Gwynn Jr. and his dad, the great relationship. So it was, I was kind of, so the only time I ever got called actually to that point in my career, the only time I ever got called up midseason was that year, 2004. I was thrown out of the bullpen. I was throwing really, really well. And so my wife was pregnant with our first child. And we had a lot of injuries. So there was just like four of us in the bullpen. And we were getting destroyed. And we had some starters that were kind of five and dive that year. They weren't going deep into games. And so the four of us were like kind of on a rotation. It's like, so it was a guy, Brian Adams, who's still one of my best friends in the world to this day. We still talk nearly every day. Fernando Rio, myself, and Saul Rivera. So Saul actually pitched in the big leagues for a couple teams. But we kind of had, it was like one day it was me and Rio, the next day it was Brian and Saul. And we just go back and forth. And we were pitching like every other day, and we were burnt out. So I think I got a 3 inning save, and we had an off day the next day. And again, my wife was pregnant, so she wasn't sleeping great and all this. And I was so looking forward to this off day, just sleeping in, going to the pool, us just sitting there literally doing nothing, and just after the game, I'm just physically spent. Manager calls me to the manager's offices. Stu, you got to hop on a plane tonight. I was like, what? He's like, you're going to AAA. And I was like, all right, I guess. And so the other thing, so my wife, she was pregnant. She was way into this. Like, she was really pregnant. Like, so I'm like, God, I got to go to Indy now. She was like 2 weeks away from.
Oh, geez.
Giving birth. So flew to Pawtucket, met the team there. It was the next morning. I think it wasn't the same night. The next morning, her parents came down to Alabama, picked her up, drove back home. I had to fly in. Our first was induced. So anyway. So during that time, I went to AAA and sucked for a month, and then got sent back down to AA. But during that month, Tony Gwynn Jr. actually went to Huntsville, and my buddy, who was Brian, he was like, "Oh man, he's such a nice guy. We sat and chatted. He just talked. He loved talking baseball." And I was like, "Oh, I miss Tony Gwynn," because I was giving up doubles and home runs to Justin Morneau and Mike Dyer, and
That's some pretty good guys. Pretty good
all
guys.
these guys. Yeah, but so Tony, great relationship. And kind of disappointed I didn't get a chance to meet him, but sadly passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, which is incredibly young. Yeah.
But I know so NC State.
Yeah, we had.
Seems to get a lot of kind of. I remember I got to call a couple of games on ESPN a few years ago, and Rafael Palmeiro's son was there.
Yeah, never any interaction with him. I played with Joe Gaetti.
Yeah,
and here's how
Gary Gaetti's son.
Yeah, Gary. I mean, both of them were awesome. I mean, first of all, I was still. It's funny, dude. I lived with a guy early on that his family's pretty prominent around here who'd made a bunch of money, and I was so naive to like status and money and then Joe came in and obviously had come from a lot of money, but I never felt that. I never felt that from him, man. I mean, it was funny, I think if you make money, your one concern is how are your kids when they grow up, right? How are they going to be, be assholes, right? And so but Joe was awesome, hardworking guy, great kid. We hung out with Gary. We drank beers and played cards together. And he had some great stories to tell about his time in Chicago, his time in Minnesota. Dude, just no ego. That's what I appreciated about Joe. Joe, as a player, competed and had the right kind of mantra that you want. But as a
Oh,
guy, yeah, never an ego that was arrogant or any. He never came across that way to me. Really, really, in a good relationship. I think there have been some challenges just from his parents were divorced, and so I think anytime that happens, there's some challenges in life. But as far as I understood it, dude, they ended up having a really good relationship.
yeah. And I remember his dad, Gary Guy, playing with the Twins. Some of that '87 team that won the series. I don't. He wasn't there for that '91 team. I think I told you I was actually watching that '91 game the other day, the Jack Morris game. And he was. I was surprised. I thought he was on that. He wasn't. And then
The Rat,
so he's
yeah.
the rat. Couldn't sneak the cheese by him. Why? So why did they end up in Raleigh though? Because clearly there's no team in Raleigh or a big league team. Did
I should know that. That's a
oh,
great
that's only.
question.
I just looked up and it said Joe went to Millbrook High School.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So
so
he's a
Millbrook is a high school in kind of North Raleigh.
Yeah, he was a public high school kid, and I don't know how they ended up there. I think Gary may have coached because he was still involved in minor leagues at some point in time. I'm not real sure, or maybe the wife was originally from this area. I should know, but I don't recall how they ended up. But I did, yeah, he was a public school kid. Yeah, like I said, you'd have never known his dad had as successful as a career as Gary did. I mean, yeah, I mean, they always had nice cars for a college student, especially back in that time. But it was never pompous. It was, it's a testament though to how you raise your kids and what you emphasize as being important too. And you think about some of the in this case, Jordan was creme de la creme. I mean, and Marcus and his brother saw, all the benefits. I don't know if they ever saw how much work Jordan had to do to get there and what how he was kind of built with that fire inside of him and over life experiences.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's got to be embarrassing, right? You think about it as a father,
Well,
Jordan's
yeah,
doing his
gosh, that's
thing.
embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, it's well. First, you want Marcus to go get help, right? You want him to figure that out and get his life straight. But yeah, as a father, it's. I mean, I can imagine that kind of stuff. It happens. I've got kids. I can't imagine how I would react. I'd probably be upset, disappointed. There's a lot of emotions I'm sure that go through your mind, right? And ultimately, at this point, he's 34, 35 years old. Like
Yeah, yeah, he's a grown man. He's making his own decisions, which
but
means
it's still, yeah, it's still
he
as
didn't
a
just
father.
start doing this, right? This is
Yeah,
something he.
you just don't get popped like that. But it's not probably not his first time. But let me run through a few other names here, and then I've got a question for you, right? So there's Doc and Austin Rivers, Dell Curry, the Hornets here, Steph and Seth Curry in the NBA.
I just want to speak on that. He had, it's funny, as good as Dell was, and really as prominent as career, his kids had to kind of go earn it. That was
Yeah.
what at least go to Davidson couldn't even. You felt like somebody would give. I know he was a scrawny kid, but when he was coming through early on, but man, what a player he's turned into. He could
Yeah.
arguably, as far as father son, there may be a better one NBA, but man, Steph has been so good for so long. He may
Yeah.
be one of the better father
Well,
son.
and Steph's talk. I've heard him talk about. He's like, man, I kind of had to earn my stripes, like at Davidson. Like I had to, and then he made that Final Four, or not Final Four, but NCAA March Madness. Man, just became a lot of people's favorite player during that time. He was going off, hitting threes, little rain, teardrops in the lane. But that was a really fun run,
I
especially
I
being
think
here in
I
North
think it
Carolina.
speaks to what you notice with him is he kept getting better. Like I
Yeah.
remember like when he was in college, right? He was a good shooter. And then they're like, well, he won't be that in the NBA, right? And there's a ton of teams that passed on him that I'm sure have regret. And it's just kind of a testament to always getting better. That's really what we speak on our kids because now you see kids that are very physically mature very early and really good. But you got to just as long as you're getting better, you got a chance. When you stop getting better is when you got to question like, hey, what am I doing or where's my motivation?
Yeah, yeah. And let me run through. There's a lot I want to mention and talk through. Uh,
Yeah.
so going to the NFL a little bit, the Mannings, right? Clearly, Archie was a All Pro quarterback. Then Peyton and Eli are one Hall of Famer, one probably soon to be. Don't forget the oldest brother, Cooper Manning, though. So Cooper in there didn't. feel bad for Coop sometimes.
Well, he had that neck issue, and
Yeah, he had.
supposedly was probably the better athlete out of both of those two,
I think
but didn't play
I think they
quarterback.
said
He was a
that. Yeah, he was a
receiver.
wide receiver. Yeah. Clay Matthews, and then Clay Matthews the third, and Casey Matthews. One that people don't really mention a lot, Christian McCaffrey and his dad Ed McCaffrey.
Well,
Ed,
Christian's been hurt so much, but I think it was at one time, and his mother ran track or something.
yeah, she was a superstar athlete. And then the NHL has a lot as well. Bobby Hull and Brett Hull, um, Keith Kachuk, Matthew Kachuk, Brady Kachuk. Auto racing. This isn't something we talk about a lot, but Dale and Dale Jr., right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, probably two of the best out there. And then there's a handful of guys who are kind of like I mentioned with Lou and Cam Collier, who are just kind of getting into it. But like Carmelo's got a son who's a shooting guard as well.
And I think he's got a chance. And then you got Agent Zero.
Gilbert Arenas.
Gilbert Arenas, his son, supposedly is a player too.
Yeah, Dennis Rodman's got DJ Rodman. Shaq's son Shakir plays at Florida A&M. Marvin Harrison Jr. Jr. now's making an impact. There's a few more, and then baseball. Going back to baseball, there's the Boone family: Ray, Bob, Brett, Aaron, the Alous, Tom Flash Gordon with his kids now in the big leagues. D and Nick Gordon, Tim Hardaway Jr. Back to the NFL, Calvin Hill. Calvin Hill was in the NFL. Grant Hill clearly one of the NBA players, right? So, I mean, there's.
Hey, I want to go down a path here. You mentioned, sometimes we've crossed into like cost of playing sports nowadays, how it's changed.
Yeah.
I saw on Instagram, and I think it's true. I was just looking it up as you were kind of going through some of those names. Like 120,000 to like 300,000 would be the total cost to get your kid through hockey. As far as starting at 4, 5, 6, or 3 years old when they're learning, if you're in the lower 48, so you're talking up to 300,000, and kind of the minimum is like 120,000 to get your kid up to that U18, and it really goes to U20. And so you talk about the barriers to entry.
Yeah.
Pretty significant one when you think about hockey, and so you need a hockey salary to be able to afford. I can't imagine. I mean,
Well,
the cost.
it's interesting. So my dad played like men's league hockey for a little bit growing, when I was a kid, and actually when we lived in Northern Virginia, he got named to like the All-Star team for the men's league, I guess.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So he can play.
Well, but he got to play. So their All-Star game was in the Cap Center, so where the Washington Capitals played. So I guess they gave we went to this game. I guess they gave everybody tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And their families. But we went. I remember I got to bring my best friend at the time, and it was Say No to Drugs Night. So like Nancy Reagan was there.
Yeah.
So they had these signs like all around, like I had the S, the kid beside me had the A, my brother had the Y. But what started happening is people started making paper airplanes out of them and like throwing them on the ice.
Not great. What position did your dad play?
I think he was a wing. I remember him, he was kind of a scorer, but so anyway, after the game, they got to play on the ice at the Cap Center. Yeah. And I remember him saying the one thing they told him, hey, don't wear your thermals. It's warmer on the ice than you're used to. And my dad was like, they're not right. And so, but he said he went out there and was just sweating his butt off because all the lights, everything else on there. So but that was a really cool experience for him. And I remember being a kid, seeing him out there, and when they were playing, it was after the Capitals game, so it was like 11 o'clock at night start time. But we got to go down on the board. The only time I've ever been on the board is like on the glass we were banging on the glass and just having a good time.
We're more club level type.
Yeah, yeah. But but you're right, like hockey. So then we moved to North Carolina. He played a little bit, and still when we were kids, but then cut it out. But man, that hockey stuff, I've never been in that world, the travel or club, whatever it is. Man,
my understanding is so Shane Willis runs. I think he lives in your neighborhood. He runs the U16 for the Canes, and these numbers are probably old, but basically $8 to $10 a season. And you do that over 10 or 12 years. It's not hard to do the math, and that does not include your travel, right? And so it gets very easy and you're not traveling to Cary, you're going to Canada. and,
You know,
or
Manitoba and stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's a great sport. It's just
Well,
not really accessible.
that's an interesting point. It's an interesting conversation, Brian, because it's we talk about this a lot, right? With our travel baseball, we try to minimize costs and try to make it as affordable for our parents and things like that. And we're not setting the cost for some of it, but with travel, and it goes like, hey, you're paying for hotels, you're paying for meals, you're on the road, you're paying for gas. Your time is valuable, all those sort of things, right? And so when we're coaching, we take it as, you know, we still have fun, but we take it serious. We know it's an investment by everybody. And we want to make sure
For
that
sure,
everybody's getting
for
the
sure.
most out of it. But again, I've seen articles. I remember Andrew McCutcheon wrote one, and it was about his journey into like travel baseball. And he was playing for like a little. He was from like Central Florida, playing for like a little local team because that's what he knew, right? And they went and they played, and he smoked a couple balls against some bigger team. The coach from the bigger team said, "Why are you playing for this team?" He's like, "Well, it's my guys. That's where I'm from." He's like, "No, you're with us now." He's like, and I think somebody paid for his. I don't want to misspeak, but I think somebody paid for like because he couldn't afford it. Yeah, didn't grow up super wealthy.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, here's the thing: it's not hard to get to that point of where you can't afford it, and it may not even be you can't afford it. You don't want to afford it, dude. You do a couple of $1,000s for 10 years, dude. I mean, that money, if you were to invest it, adds up, and it's just like there's a weird dynamic when it comes around to sports that it's supposed to be like who is the best advances, not who has the most money to
Yeah,
train. And so there's just it's kind of a weird time within sports. And I think hockey is probably, I'm sure in some of the European countries that are out cold, I'm sure there's some
yeah.
cheaper and some other ways to go about it. But it really does become geography as far as what your opportunity is. I think that's the reason football is still very prominent.
Because
Um,
you play. It's a high school sport. Like it's a publicly funded sport. Like everybody gets shoulder pads. I mean, and then you get. I mean, but there's more 7-on-7 camps and quarterback camps and kicker camps and long snapper camp. There's all these camps now. But we see it in baseball. We're like, man, I don't want to pay that much money for some of these teams that.
no. So you pay a bunch of money to get on a team, and maybe your kid is a really good player. And then you end up paying for prospect camps, and all of a sudden you put, I don't know, 25, 30 grand in it in his high school years. And it's like, dude, if you don't get it some type of scholarship, you've wasted money. I mean,
Yeah.
I know people try to argue the experience. Well, we can have experience doing something else. I mean, we ain't got to do this. I mean, it does become one of those weird things where it's like, what are we? I don't know. It just
It's turned into such a machine. It's turned into, and again, like I say all the time, it's like anything in life. It comes down to who can make money,
yeah,
and clearly a lot of people are making money off of 10, 11, 12-year-old baseball,
for sure.
softball, soccer, hockey, basketball tournaments, and yeah, in all the sports really. There's you've got a daughter that does dance. There's a lot of money in that. Like,
Yeah, that's like joining a cult. You got to give at least one kidney to be able to be in that, or you're not allowed. You give kidney, and then you lifeline. You give blood to vampires or something. I don't know, but
yeah.
yeah. So
I tried to get both of my older
it feels.
daughters
Hey, it
out of
feels like
that as soon
hockey
as I
though.
possibly could. Yeah, I wasn't. I couldn't do that. So we're very fortunate. I was very fortunate, but I was happy that they went with softball and basketball,
But
and
you had a year where you guys kind of went all in and spent a bunch of money trying to
we
figure out a
did,
way
man. My
to. Yeah,
oldest, she was on one of the top softball teams in North Carolina, and we went to Denver, we went to Atlanta a couple times, we went to Oklahoma, we went to Missouri. It was a lot, dude. And again, it cost a decent amount to be on the team. And then it was, I think we actually my wife drove to Denver with the oldest. And then I flew out there and met him, and then I drove like back, and my wife flew home because we had other kids, clearly responsibility there as well. But yeah, it was a lot, man. And then we took some recruit trips. We drove. I think she flew from I think it was Missouri. I can't remember exactly. Maybe Oklahoma to Providence, Rhode Island, because we took a trip to Brown University, like a visit. And so I drove from North Carolina to Brown to meet her there. And then I met her in Boston. Then we drove to Rhode Island, and then I was like, yeah, Brown. It was pretty neat, man. To be fair, like it was because I spent some time in Rhode Island around Providence, and I mean, it just gets cold. But it felt very Ivy League. Like we were walking around and kids were out in the quad throwing the frisbee and typing on their MacBooks and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it
On the quad,
it felt very
writing
Ivy League.
some equations on Windows. You like
Yeah,
apples?
yeah,
Yeah.
good little hunting going on. But you're right, man. We've talked about this a lot because we're in the heart of it right now with our boys coaching, and our daughters went through it with lacrosse and softball, and I did a little AU basketball for a little bit as well with the girls, and it's a racket, man. And there's got to be and we've discussed some solutions, but and I know like most things, it starts grassroots. It starts like with a small movement, and some teams have to kind of think outside the box. And um, there's better ways to do it. There's better ways where you're not having to
Oh, I don't
spend
disagree.
thousands and
I don't
thousands of
disagree, and I
dollars.
think we're with a pretty fair organization when it comes
Yeah,
to travel
absolutely.
baseball.
Yeah.
But
And
I
here's the
would
other thing.
argue on the flip side that if you could go back and run it through a town,
Yeah, yeah,
you would need people, you would need other places to commit because you can't be playing, the school of the deaf and blind. You need to be
yeah,
playing some competition. But if you could go back and run it through a town the way we did, the way it grew up with us,
yeah. Like Legion baseball and stuff
yeah,
like that. Here's the other thing that I've realized during this process, the recruiting stuff. And I feel like college coaches are lazy.
yeah.
I know I like if I'm offending you out there, I'm sorry. We hear a lot of stuff from that side, and then hey, send us some emails, send us some video. You've got like literally every kid sending, and I know you're probably overwhelmed with videos and tweets and acts on different
It
social outlets.
definitely, we haven't seen it from the boys' perspective, but I'll say even from the lacrosse girls' perspective, and I feel like you would echo this. It feels like the girls are really asked to market themselves,
It's selling. You're selling. Yeah, absolutely.
and it's not always best player gets to best school. Obviously, and maybe it's different with the higher end. My daughter wasn't, the top recruiter or anything, but it definitely feels like you were asked to really send video, really engage in conversation that really didn't have anything to do with lacrosse or even player, So I would say I don't think I may be wrong. I don't think the boys sports is that way. I feel like if you can play, you will get found. But
Uh,
I could be
we'll
wrong. I
find
could
out
be
here in a
wrong.
couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and you're right. It's felt more like marketing and just begging. It was always like you're looking for a job, trying to find a job interview. It's like, hey, coach,
Yeah,
just
with no experience.
look at my
Yeah.
resume. Yeah, look at
Yeah.
this. Yeah, I can do this. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you have the passion and desire, and you want, I think you can find a spot, right? I mean,
I agree on that.
Josh Allen, like, is one of the prime examples of
Oh,
that.
what a great, yeah. Talk
Sent
about,
his tape and read,
yeah.
letters and whatever out, and yeah, had one bite, and yeah, he's turned out okay, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Great career. Great
but
career.
this is definitely a topic that Brian and I are clearly very passionate about and want to dive into a little more. So we'll do that. We'll have a full formal kind of sit down and maybe bring in some folks, a little panel to talk about it. But definitely something we're passionate about, and again, are appreciative of the people who kind of support us and do some of the stuff. But at the same time, like you said, there are. It feels like some kids maybe kind of dollared out.
Oh, there's no question. No
Yeah.
question.
On top of bats costing like $500 a pop, and every league you start to join has a new regulation for bats. Yeah, so
I never knew. So you guys that are listening on anything that doesn't have video, you don't know. But I just did like the rock on sign, and I got the lights on our WebEx
dude,
little meeting,
yeah,
and
there's a whole bunch of them. When you like
I did
this
not know
one,
them. Yeah.
yeah. There's the double thumbs up.
Yeah, I knew that one,
Let's
but it's
see,
like, dude,
that one.
I knew that one. The hearts is what Paulie was doing. But yeah, dude, hey, I'm excited about the old podcast, right? So we're rolling along. Numbers are
Yeah.
looking pretty good. Do we pick anybody else up, Paulie, or we're still short of a few cities?
Well, we're done with the 50 and 15. I haven't really been checking. Actually, I check. We haven't picked up any of our others yet, but hey, still good listener. We appreciate everybody out there listening and sharing. Our numbers are steadily increasing. We appreciate that. So continue sharing it. Also, continue checking out the merch shop. We appreciate everybody who out there is purchasing shirts and hoodies and hats. We're talking about a couple of new designs potentially. Get that merch flowing out there. If there's something you want to see, a shirt, maybe something Brian and I have said that you'd like to see on a shirt, we're happy to do something like that for you. Hey, email us at wrightstewpodcast@gmail. Wrightstewpodcast@gmail. And we would love that. And also, we appreciate if you hit the notification button on whatever app you listen to. That way, when these are posted, we try to post them in the morning. You'll get that notification. We appreciate y'all listening today. Have an amazing day.
Out, go back.